Alright, this video is about what is real Kung Fu. Now, this video might be pretty long, so brace yourself. If you need to take some breaks, skip to the next video that's not as boring, then go ahead and do that. But this is something that's for the older audience, a little bit more mature, a little bit more educated, to really think about these concepts of what I'm speaking about. This video is more expressing myself honestly, into which to help people gain a greater understanding. So what is real Kung Fu? Alright, so from my understanding as a Chinese American, as somebody who's been studying Kung Fu for pretty much my whole life, this is what I have to say about it at the age of 36 at this moment. It is the inner discipline to better yourself. It's pretty much essentially like very hard work. Working very hard for your whole life, not just for a short period of time, but for your whole life. And it just comes natural. It's just in you. It's in your blood. It's in your heart. And it's a Chinese expression from their culture. The word comes from China. It's not in any other country but China. It's not American, it's not Canadian, and it's not French. That word is from China. The word derives from, it pretty much got developed and created from Confucius. Confucius was a great scholar in China, and the word came from him because he was such a great scholar. It's not anything to really have to do necessarily with martial arts or combat. As you know, or as you should know, Confucius he was a great scholar, and he was not a martial artist, but Kung Fu Su, so Kung Fu Su, Kung Fu. So he was like a master of his craft, which was the intellect. So in a way, he was kind of like the Albert Einstein of China, not like a scientist, but a scholar. Okay, so that's where the word came from, like working really hard. So it's not the original word is not from about combat. It's about scholarship. So there's a lot of people out there that work really hard, get PhDs, and like Dr. Martin Luther King Jr., Sigmund Freud, Carl Jung, scholars, people that put a lot of energy into developing intelligence. So that's where it originated from my understanding, and also, but now to this day, it incorporates everything, not just scholarship, but just working hard. But the people have associated Kung Fu with martial arts, with the combative expression. If you look in the dictionary right now, it'll say something about, hey, Kung Fu is a Chinese fighting system, but that's not the real meaning. That's not the true meaning. That's not what it really means. It's a misunderstanding and a misinterpretation, because of the lack of understanding of this culture. They just kind of mumble jumble words, and the media destroys the true essence of what these words really mean. People have been misinformed on a mass scale because of Hollywood, mass media, just basically giving a people a very skewed perception of what real Kung Fu is. So when people think about Kung Fu, the understanding first came from Bruce Lee to America, and then later on it went to Jackie Chan, Jet Li, and now it's mainly Kung Fu Panda. And there's a time when there was that Kung Fu fighting song, and then you see those old Chinese martial art movies, Shaolin monks. That's the perception of what people view as Kung Fu, but that's not really the original essence of it. So when I express Kung Fu and what I do in my teachings, it is about the original essence of hard work and effort, that inner discipline to better yourself, not just in martial arts, not just in combat, but just everything in life. So that is the expression that I'm bringing to the forefront, and it's a deeper understanding than what people are normally used to from Hollywood and mass media and all that other stuff. So that's the meaning that I'm using for it. That's what I'm trying to basically re-educate the people into the true essence, opposed to the superficial understanding of it, which is about just combat and all this other stuff. So, okay, so what is real Kung Fu to me? Okay, that's the topic of this discussion right now. Um, so the thing is, does everybody practice Kung Fu? Now, and another thing is the way that you're supposed to say it is not Kung Fu. That's another westernized, falsified thing that people have been accustomed to say, and that's not the real way that you say it, and then it ends up becoming a representation of something that is not even the original. So the way that you're supposed to say it is Gung Fu. That's why even Bruce Lee, he would prefer to use a G instead of a K, and he would say Chinese Gung Fu, but you're supposed to say it Gung Fu. It's not Kung Fu. So that's just the westernized. It's just the Western has really watered down and misinterpreted it and just basically falsified a lot of the essence of this expression. So you're supposed to say Gong Fu, even with the word Feng Shui. People keep saying Feng Shui, but actually it's supposed to be Feng Shui. That's how that's the real way that you're supposed to say it. Feng means wind, and then Sui means water. So Feng Shui is wind and water, but everybody's saying Feng Shui, and then that ends up becoming what people understand to be a representation of that expression, and that's far from what it truly is in the end of the day. So going back to the question, does everybody practice Kung Fu? And the answer to that is no, because not everybody works hard. Now, the people that do work hard, there are people out there that work hard, and they deserve that recognition and that respect for working hard. But in my expression of it, or my understanding of it, it's not just working hard for a short time. It's not just working hard for a long time. It's working hard for your whole life. But if these people were assumed to be working hard for their whole life, then there would be many people that can say that, hey, that is their kung fu, or their gong fu. So say, I'm just using examples. Floyd Mayweather, his kung fu is in boxing. Michael Jordan, with his kung fu was in basketball. Tiger Woods, his kung fu was in golf. Vincent Van Gogh, his kung fu was in painting. Sigmund Freud, his kung fu was in psychoanalysis, and so on and so forth. So you get to where you kind of get to understanding where I'm going at. What's his name? Tom Brady, his kung fu was in football. So basically, people that work really hard, that have gained recognition and respect for their hard work. Usain Bolt, his kung fu was in running, sprinting. So all these people have an expression of kung fu, but they cannot say, because they're not of the Chinese culture and they are not Chinese themselves, they cannot say that Usain Bolt cannot say that he is doing kung fu or sharing kung fu or teaching kung fu, because that's not a part of his culture. He's not born in China. His blood is not from China, but his kung fu, his hard work, and his discipline, basically his discipline is in the running. So he could teach the running, he could share the running, and represent himself to be a master of that. Sigmund Freud would be a master of the psychoanalysis, and then people would have to gain his approval to be able to be recognized as a great psychologist like he was. Floyd Mayweather, his kung fu was in boxing, but he wouldn't say that he practices kung fu or teaches kung fu, but he would say that he's a master of boxing, which he is and which he was. Michael Jordan could say his kung fu is in basketball, but he wouldn't say that he is teaching kung fu or practicing kung fu. He would say that, hey, he's a master of basketball and he'll teach accordingly. So they can only claim what they are truly masters in. Floyd Mayweather cannot claim that he is a master in basketball. Michael Jordan can't claim that he's a master in boxing. Sigmund Freud can't claim that he's a master in mathematics. They have mastered, their craft accordingly, and they're recognized as so. They cannot just say that they could teach whatever they want just because they get good in one area. So these are regulated professions and crafts and sports and potential arts because they're identifiable. Michael Jordan, if he opens up a basketball camp, then he's worked hard to prove himself within that expression, so then people will come to him for that guidance. But he would it wouldn't be right for him or anybody else that is not of the Chinese culture and his people to say kung fu, but they could say what they have truly mastered in, which is the crafts of which they have mastered. So that is what that is the way that I see it. Now, as far as a Chinese person is concerned, a Chinese person is the only person that can truly represent the kung fu, because it is of his culture, and he needs to express his own culture. So, meaning, you cannot have, basically, it's not proper in my eyes to have, like, say, a person that is not of that culture to be saying that he's representing that culture. So, meaning, if the Caucasian person is saying that he's representing the African culture, then that's not true. An African person needs to represent the African culture. A Chinese person needs to represent the Chinese culture. A Japanese person needs to represent the Japanese culture. Now, the Chinese people and Japanese people might say that they look alike, which they might do look alike, but it doesn't mean that a Chinese person has the right to represent the Japanese culture when he is not Japanese himself. And so on and so forth. The Japanese person is not right for him to say that he's representing the Chinese culture, even though he might look like he's Chinese, but that is not the right that's not the right thing to do. That's not proper. That's the way that I see it. Now, when somebody says that, hey, if a Chinese person is saying that he's teaching kung fu, he's basically saying that he has his own expression of the kung fu, which is unique in itself, and that he is sharing his kung fu with you. You're pretty much learning his individualized kung fu, which can incorporate many areas, and is not something that is necessarily has to be specific to one area. So, meaning, the Chinese kung fu person can be teaching you skills in boxing, of which he knows, teaching you skills in kickboxing, teaching you skills in wrestling, teaching you skills in acupuncture, teaching you skills in massage therapy, teaching you skills in reading, writing, teaching you skills in the Chinese language, teaching you skills in athletics, in fitness and flexibility, teaching you skills in meditation. He could teach whatever he so chooses because he is teaching his method, his way, basically his way of life. So you are learning the way of life of that Chinese person. all areas, not just one specific area. So Michael Jordan, he might be teaching people the basketball, but it's gonna be kind of focused on that because that's what is known for, and that's what he's advertising. Um, but he's not teaching people to his life. Like, that's different. So um, that's kind of what the Gung Fu is. So it's an individualized expression that it starts as an individual, and as the person grows to develop a bigger market, then it could become more institutionalized, similar to what happened with Sigmund Freud becoming so famous and so successful that college universities from all over America and possibly all over the world are studying his teachings even after his death. So that can happen to a person's art because he's become so worldly famous, that people will practice his art from all over the world, and even after his death. So an example of that would be the founder and the creator of Wing Chun, which is one of the most popular Chinese martial arts systems out there because of Bruce Lee. Um, not just because of Bruce Lee, but because of Bruce Lee in America. But it's still popular in China, regardless if Bruce Lee was a pioneer of the marketing of it or not. But fact of the matter is that that is a system that has been around for hundreds of years because the founder has gotten very worldly famous. Not worldly famous, but famous within China. And then a lot of people are practicing that method, that system. And, that's, in a way similar to like maybe Allen Iverson, Michael Jordan, Shaquille O'Neal, Kobe Bryant, gaining recognition for their craft and then gaining a lot of respect from the people in which to want to study under them for their craft. So it's the same thing with the Kung Fu. Somebody in China, a Chinese person, creates a method of expression, and then they teach that method and become famous over it, and then it becomes widely practiced by many, people, thousands of people, if not millions of people. Okay, so that is something that can happen, but typically the way that that it could be within the family, where there's a father that is really good at his own expression of Kung Fu and he's teaching it to his children, and maybe some friends and close family members. But there might be just a handful of people that practice his method or his way of Kung Fu, and they pass it on to the next generation in smaller group, close knit groups, and this is something that if it dies off, it might die off because it might not have enough people that practice it or are serious about it, and then eventually it's soon forgotten, and then that person's Kung Fu is just no longer mentioned and is forgotten about. So an example might be something like Hung Gar Kung Fu, or Chole Fut Kung Fu, which is basically these are representing families of Kung Fu masters, or teachers or sifus that were teaching it, but they might not have gotten enough fame and recognition for it to continue on to the next generation. And if there are people that still practice it, it's going to be a selected few individuals, and they don't have to name it essentially according to their family. They could name it something like Eagle Claw Kung Fu, Snake Kung Fu, Monkey Kung Fu. They could choose what they want to name it, but it boils down to the same thing. The person has decided to teach his methods, and he's trying to gain the respect of the of the of you know of the students in order to propagate the art. And once again, it has to be a Chinese person because this is representing the Chinese culture. That's where the word comes from. So it's not proper for a Chinese person to say that he's teaching karate, because karate is a Japanese expression. It is a Japanese word. So the Chinese have their own language to use. It's not proper for them to use the Japanese language when they already have their own language to promote and market, to share their ideas and teachings. So it's not proper for a Chinese person to say karate or jujitsu or ninjutsu or taekwondo. It's not proper for a Chinese person to say that he teaches those methods, because he has his own methods to teach. So it could be his methods on, and he could say kung fu, he could say wushu, which wushu is just martial arts in Chinese, and then gung fu is not just limited to the martial arts, but just pretty much an open-ended expression where it could just be a person studying your life, your way of life, just everything, body, mind, and spirit, and just your whole essence of being. And that's what it is, and I know a lot of Americans are interested in learning Gung Fu. They're interested in learning from Chinese people. That's why meditation is so popular in America, is because these are Eastern teachings, and China has their expression of meditation. Japan has their expression of meditation, but pretty much the birthplace of meditation, the master country, is India. So you got India, China, Tibet, you know, Japan, all these different countries of the East teaching the Westerners, Americans, about meditation. Now, meditation is not something that comes from the West. The West is good at other things, but not meditation. The West, they're not good at martial arts, but they're good at things like wrestling, boxing, football. It's very clear. And even soccer. Soccer is being popular now because of the World Cup, and Americans are not. That's not their strength. But it doesn't mean that other countries don't love that sport and they're really good at that sport in other countries. So it's the same thing with the martial arts. America is good in a lot of things, but they're not good at everything. Americans are the best at basically the firearms. They have them everywhere, and the most homicides in the world, and they love their guns more than any other country. But certain things Americans need to learn from the East, and martial arts is one of them. So the Americans that are interested in learning the martial arts, well, you need to learn from the culture of whatever art that you're interested in. So if you're an American, you want to learn Taekwondo, then you got to go to a Korean person who has basically mastered that expression of that art. If you want to learn karate, then go to a Japanese person that has mastered that expression of that art. If you want to learn Kung Fu, then go to a Chinese person that has mastered the expression of that art. It is not proper and it is not right for people that are not of that culture to try to claim mastery of that expression, of which is not a part of their history and their roots. I know that we all love to share. That's what YouTube's all about. It's about sharing, but it's about teaching as well. But I think that there is a difference between teaching and sharing. People could share, but not all the time. Is it the best to share? Certain things, you might not be ready. To share, or especially teach. And what I'm saying is that on YouTube, for example, we love to share, but we should also, what's very important is that we need to give credit to the sources of whom we're sharing from. So There's a difference between somebody saying, hey, I read this book from Bruce Lee, you should read it too, you could borrow my book, opposed to reading Bruce Lee's book and then saying, okay, I'm going to teach what I learned in that book, and then not mention anything about Bruce Lee, and not tell people to buy that book and learn from that book, but basically to tell people to learn from me, from what I learned from the book, even though I may not truly understand what that book really means. So I think there's a lot of that going on, and that's one of the biggest problems in arts in general, is that there's a lot of people that are stealing other people's ideas and expressions and essentially not giving credit, and that's not right, and that also um, develops a lot of um, falsity out there. A lot of people that are recognized that as masters that are not truly masters, and that creates a lot of corruption and a lot of just it further creates a lot of misunderstandings. And what needs to happen is that these problems need to be rectified by people gaining a greater understanding of the essence of what I'm talking about. It's like we have doctors that worked really hard to gain that title, and their studies and the schools that they've gone to, the exams that they passed, they have proven themselves to be able to undertake that title, in which to practice medicine legally, with authority, because of their hard work. Usain Bolt has proven himself. Michael Jordan has proven himself. Floyd Mayweather has proven himself. But in the realm of the martial arts, who has proven themselves? Rightfully. If you have a person that is not originally from that culture, of that art, say you got a non-Chinese person trying to teach the Chinese martial arts, or trying to teach Kung Fu, or trying to teach Wushu, or trying to teach Tai Chi, or Wing Chun, any of these things that are coming from the East, and he is not Chinese himself, my question is, who gave him that authority to do that? And even if he did get the permission from somebody, the person that gave him permission, did that person get proper permission? And there's just a lot of corruption going on that needs to be identified. And the way that what needs to be done is people need to sit down and think about these things and start to realize, look deeply within themselves and see the truth of what I'm trying to indicate. This is in no way trying to discourage people from learning the martial arts, or sharing the martial arts, or teaching the martial arts, but is basically encouraging people to do it the right way, so we do not further confuse the public. So meaning, if you love the martial arts, then you could tell people, and you're good at the martial arts, you love the martial arts, you could tell, and you're an American, and you're not of any of these cultures, you're not Japanese, you're not Korean, you're not Chinese, you're not Filipino, you're not Thai, but you love Thai boxing, then rightfully say, hey, I love Thai boxing, I studied from a lot of people that train in Thai boxing, but I can't teach you that, but I can teach my expression of the martial arts based on my past experiences, and do it the right way. If you're not of the Chinese culture, you can still say that you teach martial arts, your own expression of it, but to say that you teach something of which is not a part of you and your history, it's not right to do that in my eyes, you know. That's the way that I see it, you know. Um, you know, we need to allow these people, these minorities, and these people of the, you know, from these countries, and we need to allow them the opportunity to have leadership roles. You know, we need to have more Chinese restaurants that are owned by Chinese people, more Japanese restaurants owned by Japanese people, more Indian restaurants, you know, owned by Indian, you know, people. So the Japanese martial arts need to be led by Japanese people. The Chinese martial arts need to be led by the Chinese people. The Filipino martial arts need to be led by the Filipinos. Um, and they need to be the ones that are leading, you know, the school and educating these non or educating these Westerners of the true essence of what it really means to be a student or assistant instructor or instructor of that expression. You know, so if you got one Chinese, you know, kung fu master, and he has 1,000, you know, non-Chinese students, that's fine. And he is the head person of that school. And he will determine who is representing the school the properly and who's not out of those thousand students. There might be 10 students that are represented properly and 990 that are not representing properly. And it's up to that Chinese martial art master to determine that. You know, and, you know, same thing with a CEO of a company. You know, you have somebody that created, you know, say, you know, Apple computers, and then he becomes the leader of that company, and then he hires who he wants to hire, and he fires who he wants to fire, and he makes the decisions that need to be made in order to develop that country to be, you know, that company to be successful. So there's a lot of beauty in these different cultures out there, not just the Chinese culture, but a lot of cultures out there. There's a lot about the African culture that I love, but you know, just because I love the culture, that's just because I learn from the culture. That's just because I love the music and I love the movies and I love, you know, the people of that culture. It doesn't make me, you know, an authority of that culture.